Welcome, everyone. Here we are. It's real, live. My name is Becky Graber, and I am so happy to welcome each and every one of you to our presentation today, inspired by the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment and the much later passage of the Voting Rights Act, all about voting.
Yes, and welcome every person who's hearing this. We are just so excited. Woo! Okay, I got that out of my system. Well, not quite. But anyway, listen, women's stories often, they are just not told and not added. So this is really women's history, stuff that should be in our history books, but it's been missing. And then on top of that, African-American stories, African-American people's voices are often even left out of the left out stuff. So we're going to bring it all back in. Think of the concept of Sankofa, West African term, which means going back and fetch it, or honoring those who have come before, looking back as we then move forward. That's what we're about. And we'll be using music as our primary vehicle. What about that, Jane?
Well, originally we were going to be having a big festival in Worcester, Massachusetts, the home of the first National Women's Rights Convention. And turns out with the world conspired for us to have to go online. And but rather than raising 600 voices in person together, we hope that you'll join your voices from wherever you are and keep the spirit of that fun and participation, sing with us, and enjoy the program.
Yeah.
So I'm Pego Horstman Hodes, but you can see that my name is up on the banner from Concord, New Hampshire. And here's what you can expect from today. We're going to have stories and recordings, lots of words and speeches from the suffragists, images and pictures. We're having a special visit from Fannie Lou Hamer, which is very get your tissues, very moving. Some hats and sashes and some songs to listen to and to watch and to sing. So we really want you to sing along. We'll have words on the screen and all of that. And this is all to make history, the history of women's suffrage, but which is really the history of women, which is our history come to life. So Jane is the one who asked us all to participate and co-create, as they say. So Jane, what inspired you to do this?
Well, I'm not looking at a world that I want to exactly live in right now. And I think in order to make a new world possible, women's voices are required. We have to show up. And our foremothers showed up in spades. They even gave their lives for us to be in this place. And we're looking at an election coming up. And what are we going to do with the power that we've been given of the vote? And there is a celebrational quality to this, but it's also a commemorative quality. It's for an ongoing struggle that has not stopped. We are in it now. And these women who we'll bring to light today help inspire all of us to keep moving forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The story is not finished, y'all. We're just getting a taste of part of that journey. And yes, that is one thing that has inspired me. And I want to invite you, as you watch, as you listen, as you sing, think about what things you want to take away from this that will inform you, inspire you, encourage you about as your journey, just as you move forward from there, because there's a lot to offer. Yeah.
So I wanted to just say that what has inspired me about this, what you all need to know is that we've been working on this for a long time, months maybe, and very intensely over the last couple of weeks, months. And what has inspired me is how these women have given their lives to a cause they knew probably that would not happen in their lifetime. And they were doing it for generations yet to be born. And it reminds me of a cathedral of stonemasons and stonecutters who build a cathedral for a village knowing it will be of benefit to them when they will never see it. They might only see a few feet of a wall. They're never going to see the whole cathedral. And that what these women did is have empathy for the generations to come. And that empathy is something that we've kind of lost in the culture now in the 21st century that we have as human beings, and we can call back to bring humanity and the earth back to a healthy balance.
I want y'all to know I'm holding back. I keep wanting to say, amen. Yes.
Amen. Don't hold back.
Don't hold back.
Don't hold back.
Well,
What you thinking, Becky?
well, I'm thinking, is it my turn?
Yeah, it's your turn.
I think it is my turn to speak. And I am thinking how lovely it is to be with all of you who are here with us today. We know some of you and we don't know some of you, and we're so glad that you all decided to spend this time with us. And I'm also thinking about all the people who came before us who are with us in spirit now. The people who are the ones who've fought for the right to vote and fought for equality and fought for justice. And we want to raise their voices and sing along with them. So I think it's about time to get started.
Yes.
So what we're going to do is we're going to actually turn the clock back, but you don't have to lose any sleep over this one or gain any sleep for that matter. We're going to turn the clock back like 100 years and more than 100 years. And then we're going to sing our way up through the history together. Sing, and we can watch and listen and just experience this 2 hours that will take us through over 100 years. And so join us, and when it comes along, sing the battle hymn of the women. I imagine this tune is familiar to you. I understand that when you were children, some of you sang not very nice words about your teachers or your schools to this tune. Historians tell us that it was first a religious camp meeting song sung down south by both black and white folk. Say, brother, will you meet us? Say, brother, will you meet us? Say, brother, will you meet us on the Canaan's happy shore? There were versions sung by soldiers on both sides in the Civil War about John Brown's body, either celebrating or demeaning John Brown, the abolitionist. Julia Ward Howe wrote new lyrics when a friend suggested, "Why do you not write words for that stirring tune?" She called it the Battle Hymn of the Republic. And the suffragists knew a stirring song when they heard one. Many suffrage songs have been set to this tune. We are going to sing, join together to sing from several different songs. Surely you know the tune by now. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. And the cause goes marching on. It's the right of every woman to mark out her path in life and to be a saint or soldier or a true and loving wife. To fill the soul with gladness and recall the world from strife as she goes marching on. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the flame of women's rage, kept smoldering for centuries, now burning in this age. We no longer will be prisoners in that same old gilded cage. That's why we're marching on. Move on over, or we'll move on over you. Move on over, or we'll move on over you. Move on over, or we'll move on over you. For women's time has come. It is we who've done your cooking, done your cleaning, kept your rules. We gave birth to your children and we taught them in your schools. We've kept the system running, but we're laying down our tools. That's why we're marching on. Move on over, or we'll move on over you. Move on over, or we'll move on over you. Move on over, or we'll move on over you. For women's time has come. We have broken through our shackles, now we sing a battle song. We march for liberation and we're many thousands strong. We'll build a new society, we've waited much too long. That's why we're marching on. Move on over, or we'll move on over you. Move on over, or we'll move on over you. Move on over, or we'll move on over you. For women's time has come.
Wow, Jane, I'm gonna take that to the bank. Move on over, or we'll move on over.
Move on.
You.
You.
Yes. Wow.
Yeah, well, of course, Kathy, what we know is this doesn't go back 100 years. If we go back 1,000 years, we find the true inspiration to the Europeans who settled in America, because they saw the Haudenosaunee people, one of the Iroquois tribes. It's no coincidence that the Seneca Falls regional meeting was in Seneca Falls, because Matilda Jocelyn Gage and other of the abolitionist women had first been inspired by the Haudenosaunee women and seen that Native women had equal power with men. They had sovereignty over their own lives. So they were an inspiration, and that had been going on long before European settlers ever got here. Now, what then happens is the abolitionists begin to become passionate about anti-slavery. And what happens is they're so passionate about anti-slavery that they begin to speak, and they break their silence. The women are not supposed to speak in public. They're not supposed to speak in mixed or promiscuous group where men are there. And they were so impassioned, people like Angelina and Sarah Grimke and my girl, Abby Kelly, they spoke up. They went out in public. They went around on buckboards and horses, and they went from town to town speaking
this. Was unheard of.
Yeah, they broke the silence. And
now, yes. And let me break it down to you, just to remind you, we're now in the 1800s, 1830s or so. Slavery is the law of the land. So for African American people in this time, this was in the United States, and particularly in the South, but all over, this place was a hostile, dangerous, frightening, and oppressive space to be in. So women, Black women, were just trying to survive, to keep their children alive and their families. They could be sold in any minute, trying to protect their own bodies. They didn't even have control over it. The scientific theory was saying that Black people were not quite human. So this is a group of people that were trying to find a way to just be in a world that was telling them they weren't even deserving of it, but at the same time, using all of their labor in so many ways. So that's the way in which folks will, and that makes it even more profound that Black women in the setting, especially in the freed parts of the North, were able to organize and say, we are opposed to this, and we're going to have anti-slavery organizations. And they weren't alone in this, because although white women were free, so they weren't at the level of having the existence of others, many of them perceived of themselves as enslaved also. That's what I hear, Jane.
Well, yes, there's a great quote, says, the gospel of women's proper role was preached from pulpit and press and enshrined in the law, which classified women with slaves and imbeciles regarding property and voting rights. So yes, and it brings to mind the words of Audre Lorde, because we were in common cause at this time with the abolitionism. Black and white women together really were in common cause at this stage of the game, 1830s, 1840s, 1850s. And Audre Lorde said, no, I am not free if any woman is unfree, even though her shackles are very different than my own.
And that is one of those truths that is so profound and true today, as it was when Audre Lorde said it, or in 1800s when folks lived it. So we want to share with you one of the songs that would have been sung by these abolitionists, Black and white women together. And the name of the song is I Am an Abolitionist. And it's taken, like many of those songs were, from commonly heard tunes, in this one, Auld Lang Syne. Listen and sing along with us.
Amen. Well, pretty soon you'll sing along with us.
I am an abolitionist. I glory in the name, though now by slavery's minions missed and covered o'er with shame. It is a spell of light and power, the watchword of the free, who spurns it in the trial hour. A craven soul is he. I am an abolitionist, then urge me not to pause, for joyfully do I enlist in freedom's sacred cause. A nobler strife the world ne'er saw than slave to disenthrall. I am a soldier of the war, whatever may befall. I
Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here in Seneca Falls this July 1848 for the first convention for women's rights. We do hereby resolve the following: that all men and women are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Whenever any form of government becomes a destructive of these ends, it is the right of those who suffer from it to refuse allegiance to it, and to insist upon the institution of a new government, laying its foundations on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Now, in view of this entire disenfranchisement of one half the people of this country, their social and religious degradation, in view of the unjust laws, and because women do feel themselves aggrieved, oppressed, and fraudulently deprived of their most sacred rights, we insist they have immediate admission to all the rights and privileges which belong to them as citizens of these United States. We do this day affix our signatures to this declaration. Thank you.
Wow, that was powerful. And that was 1848. And if anybody has read, had any history at all, we hear Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, 1848. Well, first of all, Susan B. Anthony wasn't even at the Seneca Falls Convention. But the first real national convention happened 2 years later in 1850 in Worcester, Massachusetts, my hometown. Woohoo! Yes, and the home of Abby Kelly Foster as well. So this national gathering had over 1,000 people in attendance. They had to turn people away. And it became the beginning of a yearly convention dedicated from then on for women's rights. So basically, Frederick Douglass was there, Sojourner Truth. A lot of people spoke and took their power as women for the first time in this national kind of a way. And so we'd like to present to you a song by a wonderful trio called Artemisia, and it's called What Happens When a Woman Takes Power.
What happens when a woman takes power? What happens when she won't back down? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens? What happens? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens when she won't back down? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens? What happens? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens when she won't back down? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens when she wears the crown? What happens when she rules her own body? What happens when she sets the beat? What happens when she bows to nobody? What happens when she stands on her own 2 feet? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens when she won't back down? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens? What happens? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens when she won't back down? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens when she wears the crown? Whoa, we when she won't back down? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens? What happens? What happens? What happens? What happens when she wears the crown?
Whoa, whoa. Pow, I feel it all the way down to my toes. What happens when a woman takes, I'm going to walk around the house, and they'll just say, Kathy, calm down. But no.
Well,
No.
I think your husband already knows that.
I hope
Amen.
you're doing stomp.
What happens? Well, we just heard a phenomenal song, and we've heard a story about what was going on in Seneca Falls and at the convention. And now I want to take a moment to listen to some of the voices of African American women who were talking and leading and sharing during this time in the 1800s. So listen with me to some of these voices as I share some of them with you. From the mid-1800s to the early 1900s, about the turn of the century, African American women were actively involved in the suffrage and abolitionist movements. There were some women who were quite powerful in what they did and tireless in their work. Let's listen to the words from a few of those. The first is Sojourner Truth, the great abolitionist. This woman was born into slavery, sold 4 times, and ended up being invited to the White House. And in all of that, she said at one convention, if the first woman God ever made was strong enough to turn the world upside down all alone, these women together ought to be able to turn it back and get it right side up again. And now they's asking to do it, the men better let them. Harriet Tubman, another one who led hundreds of enslaved people to freedom, born enslaved, but then later free, said these words: every great dream begins with a dreamer. Always remember you have within you the strength, the patience, and the passion to reach for the stars to change the world. Maria Stewart was a freeborn African-American teacher, journalist, lecturer, as well as abolitionist and women's rights activist. In one of her speeches, she said, shall I, for fear of feeble man who shall die, hold my peace? Shall I, for fear of scoffs and frowns, refrain my tongue? Ah, no. She said no. And then finally, Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, also freeborn, suffrage and abolitionist, one of the first African-American women to be published in the U.S., said these words: we are all bound up together in one great bundle of humanity, and society cannot trample on the weakest and feeblest of its members without receiving the curse in its own soul. Powerful words then and now. Without receiving a curse in your own soul. Now, these women spoke articulately, but Black women and men had been singing for hundreds of years, singing their stories. And some of the first songs that they sang when they came to this United States in the midst of the confusion and the terror and the craziness of life were the songs of spirituals. So let's sing one of those that would have emerged during this time in the 1800s, but continues to be powerful now. This song says, don't you let nobody turn you round. Did you say that with me? Don't you let nobody turn you round. So you just keep on walking, keep on. Oh, no, that's the next part. You just say, walking up the narrow way. Okay. Walking in the narrow way. It goes like this. Don't you let nobody turn you round, turn you round, turn you round. Don't you let nobody turn you around. Keep the straight and the narrow way. Some of you might have known this song. Now, it's a spiritual, so that means if you talk, you sing. And if you're part of the community, you just join in with us. So I think all of you are singing. Make sure. I'll give you a high part for higher voices. It will go like this. Don't you let nobody turn you around, turn you nobody turn you around, keep the straight and the narrow way. And I'll give you an even lower part too for you to choose from. Here it goes. Don't you let nobody turn you around, turn you around, turn you around, turn you around. Don't you let nobody turn you around, keep the straight and the narrow way. Okay, now we've gotten parts. I'll pick one of those and sing along with us. And I'll bring back my friends if you all have time to come and join us. Here we go, everybody. Here we go. Don't you let nobody turn you around, turn you around, turn you around. Don't you let nobody turn you around, keep the straight and the narrow way. Now this time we're gonna sing Ain't Gonna Let Nobody Turn Me Around. Prophesy, y'all, here we go. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, oh, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, keep the straight and the narrow way. Now, this song was adapted again in the 1960s during the civil rights movement at that time. And they said, ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Keep on walking, keep on talking, walking up freedom's way. Sing along with us last time. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Oh, turn me around. Oh, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Just keep on walking, keep on talking, walking up freedom way. One more time, keep on walking, keep on talking, keep on talking, walking up freedom way. Yeah. Say yeah.
Got it.
Right.
Woo-hoo.
Yes, indeed. All right. Yes.
Well, Kathy, we're moving on.
We're moving on.
We are. And, you know, we're coming up to 1869. We're going to particularly talk about that year because it was pivotal to the whole movement. And
yes.
To American
and before
history.
that happened, we had the Civil War, y'all.
Amen to that.
And people killing brothers and killing each other. It was so much confusion and everything just stopped. So the coalition that had been moving along and pushing forward for abolitionists and women's suffrage, among many of it, just all stopped.
It did. And then
the
when
war was over.
Yes. And when the war was over, there were major questions for this country to look at and have a chance to reconcile with. And the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments were brought up at that time to start to look at Reconstruction and how is the South going to be worked in with the North again? How were formerly enslaved people going to be integrated into the society? Who had rights? And it was a very huge time of upheaval. And up until even right after the Civil War, abolitionists and women's suffrage was in common cause still. But when the 15th Amendment came up to give Negro men the vote, why, it caused a deep rift in the movement. And some people wanted to kind of go the way by abolitionism, which says, let's just get the job done. Let's give some rights to the Negro population. And then some said, well, no, women have to get it, because if we do, we'll make it right for everybody. And we've been fighting long and we get to do this. And it wasn't black and white. A lot, both black and white people came to both sides of those, of the discussion.
Yeah, it was for many of the African-American women, it was never a question of either getting the vote or getting the abolitionist rights of freedom. It was both, but which is the best path to get that done? And then there are many whites who said, oh no, that black people should not get their rights before white people. So we have all these different things going on at this time. It really was.
Yeah. So then what happens is they split into two groups, the American group and the national group. And one basically wants to go for states' rights, and one wants the federal law to change. And they begin to work in really different ways. But then by 1890, they come back into union. But by this time, there was kind of a top-down leadership that had developed, mostly white-led, and it was the racism of America was fairly completely baked into it, and there was a appeasing of the South that was baked into it as well. So by the end of the 19th century, we were back into the organization called NAWSA, N-A-W-S-A, National American Women's Suffrage Association, that would lead us through to the 19th Amendment.
And so we have some talk about some voices, particularly two people that represented some of these different perspectives that were going on. I think these voices might have been right before they came back together or during that time.
Well, actually, sorry I missed that, Kathy, but at that 1869 convention, we're going to give you the very words Susan B. Anthony spoke then, so that you can hear kind of what that position was.
And to be clear, one position said that white women should get the vote before black men, period, because whiteness was better. And then the other ones were, and though it's not just as cut and dried as that, but that's what and then the other group said that black men, like white men, should also get the vote, and then we will continue on and then get it for women as well. Okay, and so we have what might seemingly be clear different ways of approaching the final result. And all that racist patriarchy and all that is all mixed up in there as it has been. Listen to these voices.
Susan
Anthony. The anti-slavery schools say women must stand back and wait until the Negroes shall be recognized. But we say, if you will not give the whole loaf of suffrage to the entire people, give it to the most intelligent first. If intelligence, justice, and morality are to have precedence in government, let the question of woman be brought up first, and that of the Negro last.
That spells it out, y'all. Okay, now Frederick Douglass was a very much avid supporter of women's right to vote, and he had been a part early on of this whole movement. But now at this point, he's having to part ways. Listen to what he has to say.
I must say that I do not see how anyone can pretend that there is the same urgency in giving the ballot to women as to the Negro. With us, the matter is a question of life and death, at least in 15 states of the Union. When women, because they are women, are hunted down through the cities of New York and New Orleans, when they are dragged from their houses and hung upon lampposts, when their children are torn from their arms and their brains dashed out upon the pavement, when they are in danger of having their homes burnt down over their heads, when their children are not allowed to enter schools, then they will have an urgency to obtain the ballot equal to our own.
It takes a breath away. He spoke it. That was Frederick Douglass.
Yes. So now we're heading towards the end of the 19th century, and we begin to organize in different kinds of ways. And we'll next hear from Pego.
Hearing Frederick listening, that was Kathy's son, Philip, with that gorgeous voice. And just hearing those words, my God.
Yeah.
It just, it's frightening. It really is. So what's frightening is we're not that far away from some of that stuff. That's what's frightening. So we're going to move on first. We're going to move on into the 1900s. By the 1900s, the women's movement for suffrage was using music, and songs became increasingly important and were used for all the reasons that we know. We as singers know singing is engaging, it's educational, it's bonding. It's inspiring. It raises energy and emotions and galvanizes people to do things they might otherwise not do. And it builds community and a commitment to a cause. So in one early pamphlet, suffragists were advised to use at least 2 songs at every meeting. So, and they were encouraged to say, make sure everybody is singing, because that will just be a much more successful meeting. So what we're going to do is sing 3 songs for you, and they are 2 familiar old tunes. The first one is Keep Woman in Her Sphere, to the tune of Auld Lang Syne. It was actually one of the most popular of the era. It was used at all these meetings and rallies and marches. Then we're going to do a revised version of Yankee Doodle. And then Dare You Do It, to the tune of Battle Hymn of the Women, which, of course, now we all know. Okay, here we go.
Thanks, Pego.
Thanks. Yeah.
I have a neighbor, one of those not very hard to find, who knows it all without debate and never change their mind. I asked him what of woman's rights. He said in tone severe, my mind on that is all made up. Keep woman in her sphere. I saw a man in tattered garb forth from the grog shop come. He squandered all his cash for drink and starved his wife at home. I asked him, should not woman vote? He answered with a sneer, I've taught my wife to know her place. Keep woman in her sphere. I met an earnest, thoughtful man not many days ago, who pondered deep all human law, the honest truth to know. I asked him what of woman's cause. The answer came sincere. Her rights are just the same as mine. Let woman choose her sphere.
Nebraska now shall have a song, and surely any noodle might guess the air most dear to her would still be Yankee Doodle. Our Uncle Sam had saved himself a wondrous lot of bother if he his good things still had shared with Yankee Doodle's mother. Yankee Doodle, keep it up, our brothers must not flout us. Mind the music, keep the step, they will not vote without us. And strange it seems 100 years to trace his way and find him just now, wakening to see his half was left behind him. But looking round and taking thought, he frankly owns he missed her, and says by Yankee Doodle's side he'll make room for his sister. Yankee Doodle's wife and girls shall have his full protection, shall share his cares and holidays and vote at his election. Yankee Doodle, keep it up, our brothers must not flout us. Mind the music, keep the step, they will not vote without us.
There's a wave of indignation rolling round and round the land, and its meaning is so mighty and its mission is so grand that none but knaves and cowards dare deny its just demand. dare you rob companions who are always brave and true? How dare you make them servants who are all the world to you as they go marching on? Men and brothers, dare you do it? Men and brothers, dare you do it? Men and brothers, dare you do it as we go marching on? Whence came your foolish notion, now so greatly overgrown, that a woman's sober judgment is not equal to your own? Has God ordained that suffrage is a gift to you alone, while life goes marching on? Men and brothers, dare you do it? Men and brothers, dare you do it? Men and brothers, dare you do it as we go marching on? Votes for women!
Woo! Vote for women. Now, all three of those songs were songs that would be sharing the battle cry for the National Association of the Women's Suffrage Movement. Now, that was really taking force and going forward with this combined might. But it was now purposely excluding many of the African Americans, if not most, who were part of it. In fact, we have stories where Susan Anthony wrote to Frederick Douglass and asked him, please don't come to one of these conventions we're doing in Atlanta because our Southern hosts won't like that. So they're going on the idea to get the vote of as many white folks, Southern and Northern, for the women to vote. Now, what about the African American women? The ones who are still fighting. It's not like they stopped their fighting at the same time. They just had to change some of the ways in which they were doing things. Shirley Chisholm, who was an African-American congressman and I think the first Black woman to even run for president, she quoted that if you don't have a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. And actually, it was me quoting her. And so for these women, even if they didn't have a seat or invitation to the table, they might have built their own table. In fact, Black women around the same time, the turn of the century, began to create their own organizations. In 1896, the first African-American organization that was dealing with social issues was created by Black women. It was called the National Association of Colored Women. Colored was the term of respect in the way that African Americans talked of themselves back in the early 1900s. The theme was lifting as we climb. They wrote it, they spoke it, they had banners about it because there was the belief that if you empower self and you move forward, you're going to lift everyone in your community. And they felt that their job was to lift up the race and to do everything they could place to do this. Now, this didn't come in a vacuum, this organization. The African American church or the Black church had been in existence years before and was one of the active spaces where African American women got their training and their organizations. So they would have the Black church conventions and associations, and the women would have their conventions like this one that you're seeing here. And they were auxiliaries of the larger church organizations, but it's where Black women learned their organizational skills and their leadership training. They made connections with their communities. They inspired, they taught, and they led. So the Evelyn Brooks Higginbotham is a writer and researcher in this area and said the church connected Black women's spirituality integrally with social activism, because there was also not a split between this social activism and God being central to life and faith in God. So all of that was the background under which these women rose and made these organizations, created them. Another one that emerged were the Black sororities for the first time. Alpha Kappa Alpha and Delta Sigma Theta were in the early 1900s, and they came out of the historically Black College of Howard University. So it was the first time of Black women who were being educated, saying we will have our own sororities to support our work. The NAACP, National Association of Colored Advancement for Colored People, also evolved. There had been bombings and all kinds of terrible things going on to the Black communities, and this organization evolved. This was Black men and women. Now, there was a song written in 1900 by African-American brothers James Weldon Johnson and John Rosamond Johnson. The song is called Lift Every Voice, and it really, in an eloquent way, speaks to the story of African-American people at that time and even up to present day. It conveys the essence of the African-American spirit and the movement. And just like the theme Lifting as We Climb, this one says, lift every voice and sing. It was so powerful that it has now become known as the Black or the Negro National Anthem, and it's sung all over the world, in fact. Now join us as Philip Bullock will sing this song, Lift Every Voice and Sing.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of a bright star is cast. God of our wearies, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light. keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand true to our God, true to our native land.
Thank you, Philip Bullock. As you probably guessed, he's Kathy's son, equally as wonderful and as talented as she is. Well, now we're kind of coming around 1900, in the last decade, actually, of the fight. And the NAUSA is led by Carrie Chapman Catt at this time. She's the president. And it's kind of old school in a way. As often happens, the younger generation comes in and has no patience for this, waiting around and doing it from within the system. They're ready to let's be militant. Let's disrupt. We've had enough of this. So Alice Paul comes onto the scene now after having spent some time in England with the Pankhursts and the militancy and the uprising there. She comes here on fire and ready to take the movement over the finish line. She and Lucy Burns, there's a Mabel Vernon, Doris Stevens. These young ladies crafted new ideas and ways to disrupt the system, ones that we use still today. Things like picketing in front of the White House. It had never been done, and no one wanted to hear from them at all. They stayed for 2,000 days, I believe, I think 2,000 people stayed for over a year and a half trying to get President Wilson to do something for women. They had watchfires that they burned, waiting for the changes to happen. They picketed so long that the government got sick of them and started to imprison them. They were beaten and tortured. They were force-fed. And they just withstood all of that in order to bring us over the finish line. And in fact, between the two movements, working inside with all the Black women organizing the way they did, the young women coming in and being militant, in this 1910 to 1920, the movement comes to the ratification time. And basically what we learned from these young ladies is they want to make good trouble, in the words of John Lewis. And they did so. And now we'd like to introduce you to Becky, who's going to lead us in a song with John Lewis's words.
Thank you, Jane. John Lewis wrote and spoke, and I mean, what an inspiration he was. But there was a tweet that he wrote June 27th that Elizabeth Melvin set to music. And I'd like to read you the whole tweet and then teach you the song that Elizabeth wrote. Do not get lost in a sea of despair. Be hopeful. Be optimistic. Our struggle is not the struggle of a day, a week, a month, or a year. It is the struggle of a lifetime. Never, ever be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble. And the first part is 4 phrases: stand up and make good trouble, speak up and make good trouble, get up and make good trouble, rise up, and make good trouble. It's stand, speak, get, rise. So I'll sing it and you can join me. Stand up and make good trouble. Speak up and make good trouble. Get up and make good trouble. Rise up and make good. Try it with me. Stand up and make good trouble. Speak up and make good trouble. Get up and make good trouble. Rise up and make. Let's do it one more time. Stand up and make good trouble. Speak up and make good trouble. Get up and make good trouble. Rise up and make good trouble. That's such a good solid part, and you could stick on that the whole time. But you have other choices. The next one is never ever be afraid to make some noise. Make some noise. Never ever be afraid to make some noise. Make some noise. Never ever be afraid to make some noise. 1, 2, 3. Never ever be afraid to make some noise. Make some noise. Never ever be afraid to make some noise. Make some noise. I hope you're making some noise right now. You could sing a third above that and it lands, it doesn't go down as the whole time. I'll show you. Never ever be afraid to make some noise. Make some noise. Never ever be afraid to make some noise. Make some noise. Never ever be afraid to make some noise. Make some noise. Never ever be afraid to make some noise. Make some noise. And then there's a tenor part, but anyone could sing it. Basses, it would work for you too. It starts low and goes high. Never ever be afraid to make some noise. Make some noise. Never ever be afraid to make some noise. Make some noise. Never ever be afraid to make some noise. Make some noise. Never ever be afraid to make some noise. Make some noise. And then there's one other part up top. The descant part, and it goes, this is the struggle of a lifetime. Make good trouble. This is the struggle of a lifetime. Make good trouble. That's the same both times of the two that are set. So try it again. This is the struggle of a lifetime. Make good trouble. This is the struggle of a lifetime. Make good trouble. All right, so let me invite my friends back and we will sing along with some tracks. There they are. So you could stick on one part the whole time. You can do whatever you want. You could even, if you have some percussion instruments, use them. Gosh, if you've got a tuba with you, you could use that too. We wouldn't know the difference, I guess, except we'd see it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Stand up and make good trouble. Speak up and make good trouble. Get up and make good trouble. Rise up and make good trouble. Never ever be afraid to make some noise. Make some noise. Never ever be afraid to make some noise. Make some noise. Never ever be afraid to make some noise. Make some noise. Never ever be afraid to make some noise. Make some noise. Never ever be afraid to make some noise. Make some noise. Never ever be afraid to make some noise. Rise up, make some noise. Here's the desk can. This is the struggle of a lifetime. Make good trouble. This is the struggle of a lifetime. Make good trouble. Stand up. This is the struggle of a lifetime. And make good trouble. Get up. This is the struggle of a lifetime. And make good trouble. Stand up. This is the struggle of a lifetime. And make good trouble. This is the struggle of a lifetime. And make good trouble. Stand up and make good trouble. Speak up and make good trouble. Get up and make good trouble. Rise up and make good trouble.
Woo! Way to go, Becky.
Yeah, I feel it. I'm ready.
Make the trouble.
Woo,
I know,
rising
let's-
up and making good trouble.
Thank you,
You
John.
know, that was fantastic. Thank you, Elizabeth, for that song. And thank you, John Lewis, for that message. And you know, thinking about that, I just have to share with you an additional message of inspiration from John Lewis. You know, he came to the Berea College commencement. He was our guest speaker in 2017. And so I had the honor of arranging a song in his honor, about 200 students, and we sang a medley of songs in honor of him. I just wanted to honor this man. And after it was over, I came to him on stage to shake his hands, and he said, "You done me proud, you done me proud. I feel like I could go on a little while longer. I'll never forget it." And he also said when he stood up to spoke, and I want to make sure I get the quote right. He said, "If it hadn't been for music, the civil rights movement in America would have been like a bird without wings." And I've never forgotten that. And as we continue to talk about the power of music, that's what it's about, y'all. It's about giving us wings to soar as we connect and we go forward. Now, I want us to shift a little bit to listening to what was going on in the African American community as these powerful women have been moving for the right to vote, and they had achieved it in 1920, although it took maybe a week or two after it was officially written on paper and a little longer for it to be enacted, because really anything that you fight for, it's going to be for the long haul. Well, what about the African American women? They still didn't have the right to vote. Even though white women had it. There were poll taxes, there was torture, there were all kinds of things put in place to keep African men and African American men and women from voting. So it was just something written on paper, but particularly in the South, it was either circumvented or ignored, or terrorism to keep them. So they continued to fight for the right to vote. And it took another 45 years after this for the Voting Rights Act for African American women and men to be able to use this right to vote, be able to vote and have some ability, to actually do it. So I want to share with you some of the stories of women in the 1900s who took the mantle from their sisters in the 1800s, African American women, and who continue to fight for the right to vote, for their communities to continue to lift as we rise. Listen to some of their words. We are now in the 1920s. The 19th Amendment has been ratified, but for African American women, it made no difference. Just like the 14th and 15th Amendments before. This one was largely ignored or denied when it came to its implementation. for the African American community. It took another 45 years until the Voting Rights Act of 1965 before these amendments could be legally enforced. In the meantime, many states continued to wage brutal campaigns of disenfranchisement and terror, ranging from poll taxes, intimidation, violence, and even death and destruction. So Black women in the 1900s took up the mantle from those in the 1800s, continuing to fight for women's rights and for racial equality and freedom. There was never a real distinction between those two causes anyway in this community. Two such champions were Ida Wells and Mary Church Terrell. Ida Wells was an activist and journalist, first to write about the lynching horrors that were being imposed all over the land. She marched for women's rights and demanded her rightful place, even when white leaders tried to exclude her. She said, "The way to right wrongs is to turn the light of truth upon them." Mary Church Terrell, a national and internationally known activist, became the first president of the National Association for Colored Women. She spoke at the International Congress, for example, this was in Berlin, delivering her speech in German, French, and English. Yes. This powerful woman said, "Lifting as we climb, with courage born of success achieved in the past, with a keen sense of the responsibility which we shall continue to assume, we look forward to the future, we knock at the bar of justice and ask for an equal chance." Sing with me now as we honor these and other Black women, leaders, educators, movers, and shakers from the 1900s. We will use the spiritual entitled, "You Got a Right to the Tree of Life," to acknowledge what these women already knew. One, that they too have a right to vote, to have their voice heard, a right to be seen, and to be valued. There are so many powerful, important women at this time period. And I'm going to select a few and I'll sing out their names and you join me by responding. You got a right to the tree of life. Okay, this is how the song goes. You got a right to the tree of life. So sing that with me. You've got a right to the tree of life. Sing. You've got a right to the tree of life. And that's all you have to do in responding to me. You can even add harmony. You've got a right to the tree of life. You've got a right to the tree of life. You got it? Here we go. You got a right to the tree of life. You got a right, you've got a right. You got a right to the tree of life. Ida Wells, you've got a right. You got a right to the tree of life. Mary Church Terrell, you've got a right. You got a right to the tree of life. Anna Julia Cooper, you got a right. You got a right to the tree of life. Angelia Well Grimke, you've got a right. You got a right to the tree of life. Mary McLeod Bethune, you got a right. You got a right to the tree of life. Annie Hannah Barrows, you got a right. You got a right to the tree of life. Dorothy Height, you got a right. You got a right to the tree of life. Rosa Parks, she got a right. You got a right to the tree of life. Ella Baker, you got a right. You got a right to the tree of life. Fannie Lou Hamer, you got a right. You got a right to the tree of life. All of God's children, we got a right. We got a right to the tree of life. I got a right. I got a right. I got a right to the tree of life. Oh, I got a right to the tree of life.
That
Got
is
it right, baby. Got it right to the tree of life. Woo! You
I
know,
love
I was looking at the women, some of those powerful women, and I knew of many of them in the living and growing in the Washington, D.C. area, where my father was a Baptist minister and very involved in the civil rights movement. In fact, we have a picture of my dad, who's the second from the left, and he is protesting with other ministers in the Washington, D.C. area with Mary Church Terrell, who's the fourth one, that women's standing so queenly in the front. And I'm proud of them all. Just wanted y'all to know that. He was Demon W. White. That was my dad in Washington, D.C. But we all got it right. Who got it right to the tree? Woo! I got to stop it. We got to move on. We got to move on. Thank you.
Thank you,
I think
Kathy.
the next thing is that we're shifting now to we now at 1965, the Voting Rights Act has been signed. And that just gives some legal oomph to the amendments before, so that if people don't follow up with those amendments for the right to vote, then there's certain things that you have legal ways to restore that power, where before there was nothing to enact it. So moving now to going on forward in the 1900s, we want to shift to another beautiful song, and it's going to be shared by my friends, the Amadons, in their.
But don't we want to hear about Fannie Lou Hamer
Quite
first?
yet.
Oh, not yet. Oh,
Not quite yet.
No, listen.
Fannie Lou.
Fannie Lou is coming to visit us, and she's going to share a little bit of her story before we go to the Amadons. And it's going to be shared by the master storyteller, Sheila Arnold. Listen to Fannie Lou.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. My name is Fannie Lou Hamer. I was born and lived my life in Mississippi. I have long been one that has supported taking care of the needs of all people, and have supported that we, all people, should have the right to vote. Folks say they most remember me for my singing. And if that's all I was able to give to encourage someone to keep pushing forward, to be able to go and stand in a line or be turned away to vote and go back again and again, then I will accept that as the little light I could give. But I think most folks remember me from what I said, from speaking such truth at the Democratic National Convention in 1964. There, I came as one of the representatives for the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, requesting to be the legal delegation for the state of Mississippi. For you see, we were the only delegation that was integrated. Those that had been seated every year had always been white. And yet, Mississippi has the largest amount of Negroes, colored people, that anyone has. So we demanded that we be seated as we represent the state. And I had to speak before the credentialing committee. And those words speak my life. Mr. Chairman and the Credentials Committee, my name is Fannie Lou Hamer, and I live at 626 East Lafayette Street, Ruleville, Mississippi, Sunflower County, the home of Senator James Eastland and Senator Stennis. It was 31st of August in 1962 that 18 of us traveled 26 miles to the county courthouse in Indianola to try to register to become first-class citizens. We was met in Indianola by policemen, highway patrolmen, and they only allowed 2 of us to take the literacy test at a time. After we had taken the test and started back to Ruleville, we was held up by the city police and the state highway patrolmen and carried back to Indianola, where the bus driver was charged that day with driving a bus the wrong color. I had to leave that same night. On the 10th of September, 1962, 16 bullets was fired into the home of Mr. and Mrs. Robert Tucker for me. That same night, 2 girls were shot in Ruleville, Mississippi, and Officer Joe McDonald's house was shot in. On June 9th, 1963, I had attended a voter registration workshop and was returning back to Mississippi. 10 of us was traveling by the Continental Trailway bus. When we got to Winona, Mississippi, Montgomery County, 4 of the people got off to use the restaurant and 2 of the people wanted to use the washroom. The 4 people that had gone into the restaurant was ordered out. During this time, I was on the bus. I saw when they began to get the 5 people in a highway patrolman's car. I stepped off the bus to see what was happening, and somebody screamed from the car that the 5 workers was there and said, "Get that one there." Then the man told me I was under arrest, and he kicked me. I was carried to the county jail and put in the booking room. They left some of the people in the booking room and began to place us in cells. I was in jail when Medgar Evers was murdered. All of this account of trying to register to vote to become first-class citizens. And if Freedom Democratic Party is not allowed to be seated, then I question America. Is this America where we have to sleep with our telephones off all night because our lives be threatened daily? Because we just want to live like decent human beings in America? Thank you. I finished talking to the credentialing committee, but I learned that President Lyndon Johnson had been worried about me speaking to the committee and having myself on the news. And so he made sure there was a press conference so no one could see me. But the Bible say in Proverbs 26, verse 27, whosoever shall lay a pit for someone else will fall themselves in it. And President Johnson fell into a pit. For that even, all the news channels hearing about me speaking, well, they put me, the entire thing I said, on each of the 3 news channels. That night, the next night, and some the next night after that. That's what I talk about, going into a pit. You're traveling for yourself. But we have come to a time, we've been praying and asking God to bring about the change. And it is time for us to stand and bring that change out and about our own selves. I'm here to tell you that things have become peculiar. There used to be a time where a Negro would get hit, or a white would hit a Negro and everybody just run. But now, a white hit a Negro and folks come 1,000 or so to see and to help. We can no longer ignore the fact that it is time for us to stand up and to change. And as long as they have their feet on our neck, we cannot do so. We must now stand up as men and women. I question sometimes. Have folks even read the Constitution? In 1870, the 15th Amendment was passed, giving all men the right to vote and change the way to how they feel is right. And yet, here it is, 1964, and folks still can't have no right to vote. But I am determined that we will have the power of the ballot. Folk come up to me and they say, "Honey, I'm behind you." Well, I don't want you back there. You might be 200 miles behind me. I want you to come up to me and say, "I'm here with you." And then we can go up this freedom road together.
Woo! my heart, my heart. Thank you, Sheila, for sharing Fanny with us. No longer standing on the next show, standing side by side. Let us sing again that song, that This Little Light of Mine, which she made as a powerful song. It was a spiritual, so it began way before Fannie Lou, but she took up the charge again. And that song is radical because it says, I'm starting with me. I have a light. It has value and it matters. And I'm going to be brave enough or crazy enough to let it shine. In fact, everybody around me to make it a better place. So join us as we sing This Little Light of Mine for Fanny, for those before us, for us right now, and for those to come. Now, y'all know this. If you don't know it, you'll know it in the next 2 seconds. This little light of mine. Oh, this little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine. Oh, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Okay, sing this time. Everywhere I go, y'all. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, everywhere I go, woo, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Hey, all in my vote, y'all. I'm gonna let it shine. Every time I vote, I'm gonna let it shine. Every time I vote, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Woo!
Ooh, wee, as Kathy would say, ooh, baby. Ooh, baby.
Vote.
Yes.
Vote.
Yes. Y'all
Vote.
hear that word? Like VOTE? I mean, like really. Fannie Lou's talked about it and all these women before. Okay, now we're going to hear from my friends, the Amadons, in a special song. Take it away, Peter.
Hi, I'm Peter Amadon. And before we get to the music, I'd like to tell you a bit about the composer of the song, Vote for Me, my family and I will be singing. Faya Rose Toure is an American civil rights activist, educator, lawyer, and songwriter who lives in Selma, Alabama. She was born and raised in North Carolina, and in 1969 she went to the Harvard Law School. Faya Rose Toure worked on a number of high-profile civil rights cases during her law career, including the case of Pigford versus Veneman, the largest civil rights case in history. She founded the National Voting Rights Museum, the Ancient Africa Slavery and Civil War Museum, and the 21st Century Youth Leadership Movement. Faya Rose Toure was Alabama's first black woman judge. When Becky Graber wrote to ask permission to sing her song for this project, Faya Rose Toure replied, and I quote, "Of course you have my permission and blessing to sing Vote for Me, for when I wrote it to share. I truly support what you are doing. I am so happy that you are telling the story." I have to mention that Mary Alice's and my two sons, Sam and Stephen, recorded Vote for Me in 1990 when they were just about the age our two singing grandsons are now. Ladies and gentlemen, Faya Rose Toure's Vote for Me.
I'm just a little child, you say. I don't know how to read the world today. But when I hear the children cry, I need to ask the reason why. I would like to
to bring about a change, but I'm too young to play the voting game. Won't somebody hear my plea? Go to the polls and vote for me.
Mother, father, take my hand.
Vote for me until I can. Sister, brother, take my hand and vote for me until I can. Doctor, lawyer, preacher, man, vote for me until I can. Voting is more than the right to say.
Voting is your responsibility. Voting is more than your right to see. Voting is your responsibility to me.
I'm just a little child, you say. I know what's going on in the world today. But when I hear the children cry, I have to ask the reason why. I would like to bring about a change. I'm too young to play the voting game. Won't somebody hear my plea? Now go to the polls and vote for me. I say, Mother, Father, take a stand. Vote for me until I can. Sister, brother, take my hand. Vote for me until I can. Doctor, lawyer, preacher, man, vote for me until I can. Voting is more than a right you see. Voting is your responsibility. Voting is more than a right you see. Voting is your responsibility to me.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
They're so precious. Oh my goodness.
Oh, that little one has such great rhythm. Oh my God.
Yes, this is fabulous.
But that is the point. We're supposed to vote for them, for those generation, for those. Take care of this. Leave them a better place.
Yes, yes.
So I want to point out that not with the amendment in 1920, not everyone got the right to vote. Besides African American women who were excluded by Jim Crow laws and what you heard from Fannie Lou Hamer and horrific racism, Native American women were also excluded. They were not considered full citizens until 1924, and even then, they were often, the states would call them wards of the state, and they were not allowed to vote. And they weren't allowed to vote until the Voting Rights Act of 1965, as well as the African Americans. Asian American immigrants were not allowed to be naturalized citizens. So though there were many Asian Americans here, there was a lot of racism for them as well. And in fact, there was a Chinese Exclusion Act. Chinese were excluded for all kinds of things. And then in 1943, the Exclusion Act, which was the Magnuson, I believe. Anyway, they were then allowed to vote. So I found a quote in looking this up. Marcia Chatelain, a professor of history and African American studies at Georgetown University, said this: "A victory for some was not a victory for all in 1920, when in 2020, there are still far too many barriers for people to vote." So our basic message, if you haven't gotten this yet, it seems pretty clear, is to plan your vote. We have a slow post office. As somebody said to me the other day, October is election month. So you don't need to wait till November 3rd. If you're in a place with long lines, go get your ballot, drop it off, drop it in a box, mail it well ahead of time, figure out what the deadlines are in your area, and make sure that your vote counts. Wherever you vote, the whole point of a democracy is that everyone votes, and that makes it work. We get to disagree and we get to vote. So that's my cause. Go vote. So now I'm going to teach you a song. So voting is a way of lifting our voice. And this is a song called I Lift My Voice. And that song made me cry. So I have to pull myself together here. A way of lifting our voice. This is called I Lift My Voice by Andrea Ramsey. I love the song. I played it all spring once COVID started. So Kathy and I are going to do the words like we would do if we were live, if we had done this live in Worcester. So I'm going to teach you the chorus. And the first words are, when they try to divide us. When they try to divide us.
Divide us.
Right. I'll let Becky do the echo. It will only unite us.
It will only unite us.
I lift my voice.
I lift my voice.
So let's say the whole thing. When they try to divide us, it will only unite us. I lift my voice. All right, excellent. So here's how it goes. When they try to divide us.
When they try to divide us.
It will only unite us.
It will only unite us.
I lift my voice.
I lift my voice.
So I'm going to sing the whole chorus a couple of times just here, and you sing with me, and the words are on the screen. When they try to divide us, it will only unite us. I lift my voice. Again. When they try to divide us, it will only unite us. I lift my voice. Okay, you ready? Here comes a whole song. This is my husband Paul on guitar. And we're going to have a few verses. If you can figure it, the verses kind of repeat. If you want to sing there, you can. But sing the chorus with gusto.
When I lift my voice, let it be in song, a defiant note in the face of wrong. I won't stand alone, we'll stand side by side, 'cause we know that love is always justified. When they try to divide us, it will only unite us. I lift my voice. When I lift my voice, let it be for good. Let me care as much as I know I should. I won't stand alone, we'll stand side by side, 'cause we know that love is always justified. When they try to divide us, it will only unite us. I lift my voice. When they try to divide us, it will only unite us. I lift my voice. When I lift my voice, let it shine a light through the darkest day and the starry night. I won't stand alone, we'll stand side by side, 'cause we know that love is always justified. When they try to divide us, it will only unite us. I lift my voice. When they try to divide us, it will only unite us. I lift my
Beautiful.
So great job.
Beautiful.
Lift our voice.
And lift each other.
Thank you.
And lifting each other up. And you know, even when those splits had occurred in the past and continue to occur, there are also other people who make it their business to work together. There have always
Mhm.
been people in the Black community, white community, and others who have made it their life's work to work
Mm.
together, to lift each other up. That's where our power is.
Amen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
We are,
lifting voices in song as well.
yes. Oh
Yeah.
my God. Yes. Through song. Through
Right.
song. It's
Often
symbolic of lifting. I'm just really, I guess I'm still sitting down. I feel like I'm wanting to just fly, a little bit. I won't try. Yeah. Now we're moving to our final selection, our final song that we want to share with you. And I'm so excited that the composer of this song is here with us in our virtual studio. So I would invite Dr. Diane White Clayton to please come and join us. The song. There she is. There she
What's up, ladies? Oh,
Hey.
you guys are rocking this thing. My goodness. I was taking notes, being in school. I was learning new songs and loving them and over here jamming with you. What a beautiful, beautiful event and such an important time in our history.
Oh,
And to
yes,
sing
it
so many
is.
commonalities when you're, I mean, the saddest part, which one of you said, I know already at the beginning, that we look at this and we see so much of what's happening today. Isn't that
Yes, honey.
ridiculous?
Mhm.
100 years
It's
later?
crazy. Now,
Oh
before you
my
say another word, I want y'all to know
Yes.
who this person is.
Oh,
This Dr.
sorry.
Diane White Clayton. Her doctor's in composition. It could have been in voice and piano. She's really super bad. Anyway, but she is a composer among her many things, choral conductor and other areas and professor and all those things. And so she is sharing one of her compositions with us that is called One by One. And I'm extra excited because she also happens to be my sister, like my blood sister. Yeah. Yes, she is. Same mom and dad, that kind of thing. So I'm
Yes.
just so proud of her. I'm so proud of her. Okay. Now I just had to add that in, But I want her to talk to us a little bit about, and you can continue the thoughts, the reflections that you have, Diane, and then tell us a bit about this song that is going to be a culmination in many ways of the various words and songs and stories you've heard today.
Yes, I want to thank you again, the four of you, for walking us through history, for teaching us, for some people who know their history, for reminding us or just bringing things to light. We are in a pivotal time in our nation, in our world, and to listen to the words and to hear the stories of women and men 100 years ago and how their passion for justice and what they felt was right led them to help change our nation's history. And that's what this song is about. One by One is a song I wrote just last year. It was premiered in December. It was commissioned by Chorus Austin, a wonderful choir in Austin, Texas. The artistic director, a dear friend who has become my friend since we did this collaboration, Ryan Heller. I met him at a conference, and Ryan contacted me because they wanted to write something that would be a tribute to one of their board members that had passed away, an African American gentleman named Dr. Reuben Roosevelt. And Dr. Reuben Roosevelt McDaniel, excuse me, I'm excited. But the cool thing about this professor, he was a giant of a human being, and I could talk long about him, and I won't, but I just suffice it to say, he understood one of the many things. He was just a great humanitarian, in addition to being a brilliant scholar. But he held strong to the belief that we don't get where we are by ourselves. We achieve, we transform, we progress because of community. And it is indeed that community that we are celebrating today. This song, One by One, just simply states, I wrote the words and the music, and I wrote one by one by one by one. Let's all walk together. Different, no two the same. Letting go, yet holding on. And what I wanted to stress is for many years, a buzzword, well, some people call it a buzzword, some people don't like the word, is diversity, and more so tolerance. I don't like the word tolerance, I have to tell you, because I don't want to be tolerated, nor do I want to tolerate anybody else. I want to love and understand. And this song to me celebrates something that was just said, that Pego just said, I believe, where she was saying, let's just vote. We choose to live in a democracy, and we don't have to all be the same. Heaven forbid, right? But what we do want to do is we want to just honor our humanity. We want to understand. We want to let our voices be heard. But One by One says, is a reminder, I should say, that these great movements, like the one we're celebrating today, the women's suffrage movement, happened one person at a time. Whatever your passion is, whatever you feel strongly about, don't let the lack of a whole bunch of people stop you. There are many people that believe the same way that you do, but it just takes one person standing and making a difference. Make that difference in terms of your vote this year, please, if you happen to be here in this country watching this now. One by One, I hope you enjoy it. And I want to tell you, this is actually the second time this piece has ever been performed. And this is the premiere of a video I haven't even seen yet. So we're going to see it for the first time together. And I'm joined by singers from across the country, one by one.
One by one, by one, by one, let us walk together, different, no two the same, letting go, yet holding on. Step, we journey, listening we can make it. Yes, we can. Buy one, buy one. Letting go yet holding on. Buy one by one. Come on, Jim. Buy one step by step. Yeah. We're gonna journey. Buy one. Letting go yet holding on. Buy one. Step by step. Keep on stepping. Yes, we can. We're gonna make it. Buy one. Just takes a one. Buy one. Letting go. Let go of hatred. Letting go of your fears. Letting go. Yes. Holding.
Wow! Oh my
Whoa,
God!
nicely.
Oh my God!
Nice.
That was
Where are the
fun.
tissues?
Wonderful. What a
Okay, I want to just say, since we have this conversation time here for a minute, my daughter's getting her master's in arts and entrepreneurship, and she's been very depressed because of the world. She's 34. She's an artist. She can't do anything, and she's learning about the environment. And that song and the message that we have sent here is that we can change the pattern of the earth. We can change racism. We don't have to accept that it's the natural course of things. We can do this one by one. I'm so glad, Diane, that you wrote that song and let us share it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amen. Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you.
Yes. The great poet said, "We are the ones we've been waiting for, y'all."
Yeah.
It's on us. So as we come to a close, and my heart is so filled. Oh my God, it's so filled. I wanted to just say the things that have stood out for me, and invite you, my friends, to do that as well. From all of the stories and all the things that we have heard and what we've experienced. And one thing that stands out for me of the many is the power of faith and community and spirit and fortitude and being there for the long haul. And the fact that we have the answers within, even if we don't see them.
Yeah.
And so if you're one of those who's been hurting, discouraged, afraid, uncertain, or you just plain tired, know to hold on, gather yourself up. You can do this. You're not alone. You got yourself in. For me, you got God's spirit within you. You got the answers, and one by one, we can make a difference, y'all. We will continue to make a difference in this world.
Step by step. One by one.
Step.
Step by step.
Work and vote. That's all I'm gonna say for the moment.
So we were talking about, like, what have we learned here, and in this process that has taken us many months and such a lot of great, fun, educational, expanding, creating together with you four. And I have been particularly struck, and Diane mentioned this too, with the parallels of 1920 with now. We had a flu epidemic in 1919, and we have the COVID pandemic in 2020. But we had voter suppression, we had racism across the board for anyone who wasn't white. We had patriarchy, continuation, of course, of that, protest, marches, activism, militancy. And we had the power of music to bring us together and to inspire us, as Kathy was just talking about. It is the key, as John Lewis had said before. And the courage and the power the suffragists had, we also have, to envision and work for a higher cause for those not yet born. And it is, as those cute little grandchildren said, it is our responsibility to do this for them, for whatever those grandchildren are, for anyone's grandchildren. And we can use music to move forward. So I thank you for all of that.
Yes. Ooh. And the power of music is what was the original inspiration for this whole coming together. And I hope you at home, my friends and family and those I haven't met yet, my choir members, I hope that you felt what we were trying to bring forward in the music, because I did. I was crying behind the scenes, and I knew where we were going. I hope that you were able to engage and find something that meant something to you and that touched your heart, and that we understand how important women's voices are as we continue this experiment, this struggle to know who's included in this American life. Yeah.
So right, Jane. Well, I'd like to start a poem. I'll share too, but I'd like to start a poem, The Gift to Sing, by James Weldon Johnson, the same man who wrote the words to Lift Every Voice and Sing. The Gift to Sing. Sometimes the mist overhangs my path and blackening clouds about me cling. But oh, I have a magic way to turn the gloom to cheerful day. I softly sing.
And if the way grows darker still, shadowed by sorrow's somber wing, with glad defiance in my throat, I pierce the darkness with a note and sing and sing.
I brood not over the broken past, nor dread whatever the time may bring. No nights are dark, no days are long, while in my heart there swells a song, and I can sing.
I brood not over the broken past, nor dread whatever time may bring. No nights are dark, no days are long, while in my heart there swells a song, and I can sing.
We can sing.
We can.
Yeah.
You know, as opposed to my colleagues here, I sometimes have a hard time knowing how I'm feeling. My grandpa used to say, still waters run deep. And I think that's true. And it takes me, I have a hard time like tuning in to know how I'm feeling, but I know that right now I am feeling full and I'm feeling proud and I'm feeling happy that in a kind of in a deep way, happiness that we've been able to connect with each other in a way that could get to the depth of the truth. And of course, there's always many, many truths because everyone has all sorts of their own truths, but to get to more of the truth of this journey that we've taken through our country. And I'm so happy that we've been able to do it together, the four of us. And actually, not only the four of us, because there's all sorts of people behind the scenes, all the other presenters, all the composers, all the singers, all the Sheila with the wonderful Fannie Lou Hamer, and many people to thank. But there's two in particular who are behind the scenes today. And so Tess and Jess, I'm hoping you'll show yourselves. We call them TJ sometimes, but they are the two women who've been putting us up on the screen. And here they are.
They're fierce, y'all.
And we couldn't have done it without them. Thank you so much.
All have done it without them.
We couldn't have.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank each one of these wonderful women you see here. We spent lots and lots, hours and hours of heartfelt work to bring this to you. And we're just grateful to be here and for the messages that we were able to share and experience.
So I'm going to wrap up with these few words. First, thank you for joining us. And we hope you enjoyed singing along and learning more about the ongoing story of women's rights and women's votes. The story is still unfolding, as you know. Your vote counts as we continue to shape an America that we'd like to live in. One where Black Lives Matter, where women share power, and every vote is counted. And if you'd like more resources, go to our Women Sing 100 website. And we have posted all kinds of resources for you there. But ultimately, use your voice, sing, and vote.
Vote.
Amen. Thank you, everyone.
Everybody say amen and I love you all. So bye. We see you all.
Okay. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.